just don't forget, this does matter for the story. I'm setting this up. Abraham's at the very top. Abraham was a guy who lived around the year 2000 BC. God showed up to him and said, I'm going to make you the father of a whole bunch of people. A whole nation is going to come out of you, and they get a whole land. I'm going to give them territory. You get a car, and you get a car. He's the original. I won't say it exactly. But he gave him land. It's called a land grant, technically. It's not technically a covenant. It's a land grant. I'm going to give you all these people in this land. And then Genesis tells about 10 major narratives of how these people just were horrible. I mean, they were horrible. They screwed up almost everything, and God still worked through all their sin and God worked through amazing things through Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and Yitzhak, Rebecca, and so forth. Then we get down to Jacob or Yaakov. He's also called Israel. Okay, and he goes to Leah and Rachel. I'm going to go down there for a second. So under Leah, I'll start on Rachel. That was his favorite bride. We talked about Joseph. That was last week. So remember Joseph, he, in the story, he might be a little bratty, but he's a good guy. He's faithful to his father. His half-brothers want to kill him. And then another older brother says, let's don't kill him. Let's make some cash off of selling him into slavery. So they do. And by the end of the story, this depressing story, Joseph, God's with him, Joseph's headed down to Egypt, thousands of miles away from home, thousands of miles. And his dad, Jacob, thinks he's dead. And he mourns. He says, I'm never going to stop mourning. That was my favorite sign. I'm never going to stop being sad. Chapter 38 goes back up and has another brother. That's Judah, or Judah. So Judah's the half-brother of Joseph. We're going to talk just a little bit about him, because Genesis does. Judah is where the word, of course, Judah in the south of Israel, so Israel's in the north later on, centuries after this. Israel will be in the north, the name of Israel, the name of Judah. It's where the word Jew comes from. Judah, Jew. So Judah, there's a story of him. And Judah, while the idea is that in like a really good movie or a good book, you have the story of Joseph. He's on his way thousands of miles south to Egypt. And then he's going to have a whole narrative. While that story's going on, this is what's happening in Judah's line. So these stories are happening. It's almost parallel a lot of stories. And so for a second, chapter 38 goes back, and this is what happened with Judah. Judah is a fantastic example of how to blow it. He's a fantastic example of how you don't do it. When we get to Joseph this morning, you'll see he did a fantastic job. He did the opposite of Judah. So the narrator is deliberately doing it. Okay, Judah, there's two things that really matter to the story that, as Americans, would make it sound so bizarre to us. Two things that sound very bizarre, but it was not bizarre to them. One thing you need to know is this. In the ancient world, for centuries, Egyptians and Hittites and Jews, if I'm married to Elaine, and I have a brother named Stephen, he's 2.5 years older than I am, much, much less handsome and smarter, but he exists. I'm just joking. He never watched my film. He works at Amazon. He's into film. He's read, love him. So his name is Stephen. So I'm married to Elaine. So if I died, there was a custom where my brother is supposed to marry her. So if we didn't have children, so that they would then have sex and bear children. It was a custom that all ancient cultures did. It was the moral and legal obligation. And for example, we see this in Deuteronomy. If brothers live together and one of them dies without having a son, the dead man's wife must not remarry someone outside the family. Instead, her late husband's brother, that would be my brother Stephen, must go to her, that means and marry her, and perform the duty of a brother-in-law. In Latin, levir means brother-in-law, so we call this a levirate custom, the custom of the brother-in-law. Then the first son she bears will continue the name of the dead brother, like named after David. I like it as my brother. Thus preventing his name from being blotted out of Israel. But if the man does not want to marry his brother's widow, she must go to the elders of the town gate and say, my husband's brother refuses to preserve his brother's name in Yisrael. He's unwilling to perform the duty of a brother-in-law to me. She's complaining and fussing. They're supposed to do something about it. Then the elders of his city must summon him and speak to him. They say, brother, you got to do this. Don't you know you got to do this? If he says, no, I don't want to marry her, then his sister-in-law must approach him in view of the elders. Remove his sandal from his foot and spit in his face. Take that, son. She will then respond, thus may it be done to any man who does not maintain his brother's family line. And from then on, he's going to be called the family of the one whose sandal was removed. Mic drop. I'm making fun. It's a big deal back then. Hittite laws add another thing. Not only is the brother-in-law supposed to do it, But if he refused to do it, she's supposed to go to the father-in-law. In the ancient world, this happened all the way, of course, Genesis 38. We've about seen an example. It's applied in Ruth all the way to Mark's gospel. Pharisees come to Jesus and say, Jesus, let me ask you a question. One guy, he dies, and she marries his brother. 7 times it happened. Whose wife will she be in the world to come? So how much it happened, we don't know, but it was a custom. That's one thing you got to know about the story. And 2 is this. They're normal people. Ancient Jews often had sex with prostitutes. And there were certain prostitutes that liked the most. Seems to be the case. They like any prostitute. But around the sheep shearing time and harvest time, there were certain temples that pagan Canaanites enjoyed, and they would have temple prostitutes. The assumption was if you had sex with those prostitutes near that cult of that god, your crops might be better, your sheep might be better. But guys, don't get any ideas. You're Christian. It happened so much about 1,000 years after this event, about 1,000 years in the book of Hosea, it's still happening. Hosea says this. Hosea says, I will not punish your daughters when they commit prostitution, nor your daughters-in-law when they commit adultery. It's the same thing. For the men consort with these harlots. They sacrifice with temple prostitutes. The people that lacks understanding will come to ruin. And here their point Hosea is, I'm not going to hold them accountable. They're going to do what they got to do because you keep using them. If you'd stop using the drugs, they wouldn't sell them. Okay, because of that, we have this story in chapter 38, which I want to give a summary because I want to focus on Joseph. But in Genesis 38, it recounts the story of Judah, that's Joseph's half-brother, and maybe Canaanite daughter-in-law Tamar. She's the main point. Okay, Judah has a son named I had I have a friend named Aaron. He's from Arkansas. And his wife, Rachel, they're both lawyers. She's a lawyer. She said, David, me and Lane, she goes, I thought for years his name was Ern until he spelled it. That's Aaron. Yeah, I said that, Ern. No, that says A-A-R. I said it, Ern. He's from Arkansas. They laugh. It is fine. So I always think of Aaron now. Judah's eldest son, Ern, he marries Tamar, but then he dies. It just says he was wicked. God killed him. We don't know what he did. He died. Well, they don't have a son. So Judah, the father-in-law, says, well, here's my second son, Onan. Onan, you got to have a son. Well, he loves having sex with her. The Hebrew is he does it all the time, but he pulls out, there's no baby. So he's like, I'll have all the sex you want, but I'm not having a son. Now, why would he do such a thing? Because if he bears a son, his inheritance, he would have gotten extra. He won't get it. It'll go to that son. When I told that, that's probably what the case is. Well, that's not good. Well, then Onan gets killed. God says, you're fine, she's dead. Now the dad's like, I'm tired of giving you my kids. They're all dead. So he said, here, Shelah, you'll have Shelah. You'll get engaged to Shelah. But he delays the marriage forever. It's like you just stay in this betrothal limbo purgatory. But now she's acting like a helpless widow. Women can't hold land. They can't hold a 401k. They can't hold a bank account. This is not, they have the moral duty. Judah had the moral duty to make sure she had a son. He's not doing it. He's wrong in the ancient world. So Tamar says, here, I'll take matters in my own hands. I know he likes to visit the prostitutes, as a good father-in-law does. I'll disguise myself as a prostitute, maybe a temple prostitute, we're not exactly sure, but she covers her with a veil, temple prostitute with a veil. And he gets Judah, they have sex, and she goes, how much does it cost? And she says, a kid, not a child, but a baby goat, as it always does. Anyway, he goes, I don't have a baby goat. I tell you what, give me collateral. Give me your seal, which is a cylindrical little seal, like a kind of like a portion of a straw. That seal they would roll on wax and it put on a necklace. Give me your seal and your cord and your staff, which would have had a name on it. That's collateral. Then when you come back, you give me your kid and then we'll swap out, which is brilliant. Now she has this, it's like his driver's license. Give me your driver's license. But of course she gets pregnant. And when he finds out, he's like, burn her! She's an adulteress. She's a prostitute. She goes, well, the guy impregnated me. This is his stuff. Uh-oh. Oh, snap. He goes, she was righteous, I was not. And then she eventually has 2 twins, Perez and Zerah. Now, the story doesn't really matter, except later on we'll learn Perez became his grandfather on down to King David, and eventually related to King David. So Judah is a sad, sad story of sin and getting prostitutes and not doing his moral duty. It's a sad story. Meanwhile, what's happening to Joseph? A very, very different story. Now we're going to slow down. So Genesis 39, verse 1. You have it, amen? Joseph had been taken down to Egypt. Now, technically in Hebrew, it's Potiphar. If you grew up in church, that sounds ridiculous. You sound what? Potiphar. I know, I'm sorry, but it's a pattern. So I'm going to try my best to say Potiphar with Potiphar, which literally means Ray or Ra, that's the sun god. He bears good gifts. It's like saying that baby's a gift from the sun god Ra. Ra who gives gifts. So that's Potiphar. He's an Egyptian who was one of Pharaoh's officials. He was the captain of the guard. It might mean chief butcher in Hebrew, but it probably means something like the guard official, like a defense, that or prison. Not exactly sure. He's captain of his officials. He brought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken there. Now Yahweh was with Joseph. He was with him, and he prospered. And he lived in the house of the Egyptian master. So he's a big dog. But he prospered, Joseph did. Verse 3. When his master saw that Yahweh was with him, and that Yahweh, our Lord, gave him success in everything he did, Joseph found favor in his eyes and became his attendant. So he's moving up the ranks. Dude, God is on your side. What you touch turns to gold. And so he's moving up the ranks. Now he's a personal assistant to this guy. Potiphar put him in charge of his household. He entrusted to his care everything he owned. Dude, I just trust you. Go to town. Verse 5, from the time he put him in charge of his household and all that he owned, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian because of whom? Don't forget that, because of Joseph. The blessing of Yahweh was on everything Potiphar had, both in the house and in the field. So much so, he left in Joseph's care everything he had. With Joseph in charge, he didn't concern himself except what he ate. And that probably is an idiom meaning not everything, like outside my own personal private affairs. I trust this guy. I trust this guy. God's blessing. Now, what stands out to me, just two quick reflections on this, is Joseph, God used Joseph to influence these non-Hebrew people because he was faithful among the non-Hebrew people. Christians, you can't be a blessing to non-Christians if you act like a non-Christian. You just can't. You can't be a blessing to people that you are just like. You're just like them. You're not a blessing to them. You're just them. If you're a drop of water in the ocean, you're just part of the ocean. You have to be different than that. Joseph would not have been a blessing to these people had he not been obedient to Yahweh while he lived a bunch of, the technical word is paganism. It's just the classic step of ancient paganism. Egyptian Canaanites worship of the sun god, moon god, all different kinds of gods. And Joseph said, I don't do any of that stuff. I worship one God. I'm going to act like that. We'll see. He's going to act like that. Why would he do such a crazy thing? Because he worked for God, not for them. Potiphar's not my boss. Not really. He gives me tasks to do, but I don't outwardly report to him. And Paul will say the same thing, of course, in Christians, the New Testament. The same. We talked about that when we did the Ephesians sermon. Colossians 3, Ephesians 6. You don't work, brothers. You work as working to the Lord. Remember that? Remember that all? You don't work for your boss. You work as you're working for the Lord. I'm not doing it for you. That's how. Now think about, please, before we move on, just sisters and brothers in Christ, when you're in the workplace, are you just like everybody? You might say, well, David, I'm surrounded by Christians. Well, then, right, the analogy doesn't hold. But is there anybody at your workplace who's not a Christian? Is there no daylight between your behavior and another one? Christians, if you're at classroom, you're a student. Is there no daylight between what you do versus, people who are not non-Christian? If you did a poll at your school or your workplace, you go, here's the homework assignment. Let's assume they did it. They read the Gospels, and then after having read the Gospels, put in the top 5 people you think are actually Christians at your workplace. Would you be the top one? Would you make the top of the list? So they go, man, I didn't know at all. I had no idea. Because I've been there when you told the same joke. You talk just like we do. If you fit in perfectly, you can't be a blessing. It's impossible. You have to have the risk, the courage to go, I didn't say you walk around superior. You're just, no, man, I'll do that. Another thing, of course, is God is absolutely with you. He does not ever leave you. Sisters and brothers, your feelings might tell you that you think He's are. Feelings can be deceptive. God is not deceptive. He does not leave, ever. And that's when we experience divine favor. Circumstances through which we go don't limit God. Like God's going, oh, man, now that boss did that. I don't know what to do. Had they not done that, Had those non-Christians not done that thing to Susie, to Cheryl, to Bob, and Steve, man, whoo, I would have blessed them. But I don't, in fact, where'd they go? I don't know where they went. You see them, Angel? I don't see them. Gibberish. Circumstances don't limit God's involvement with that. I remember when I was in youth, I wish I knew the day, because this was a big deal to me. I was just a dumb youth. I'm not a dumb adult, but I mean, I remember distinctly, I remember when it happened, the week. It was around an experience in God when I first did it. I remember that. I went to youth group that week in a youth group, and we always had a time with youth. I said, all right, buddy, what's your prayer message? What's your prayer praises? And so we were sitting around all, and I remember distinctly, I said, this week, I don't even want to hit me. Really hit me this week. God is with me wherever I go. I'd always perceived of God at a church building or a youth event or that worship time. But it hit me. I mean, it hit me like a ton of bricks. He's in the classroom with me. Like I might say that if someone asked me, but I didn't really believe it. And I remember that was my praise. Like it, and I brought a girl that I'd started dating. She was a Christian. She was real sweet and quiet. And I brought a youth group. She was sitting around beside me. I remember looking at her, and she kind of shook her head like I'm not there. And I remember, and later on we had some good talks about it. And not like I'm so much better than you. Aren't you glad that you're my presence? It was amazing. It finally clicked with me. This is embarrassing. I'm this old in youth group. I'm 18 years old. Or 17, whatever it was. Like, man, he is, yes, which can be very encouraging or terrifying, depending on what you're doing, depending on your circumstance. You either want him there or you don't. But nevertheless, no matter what circumstance I'm in, he does not leave. And moreover, your circumstances aren't in charge of your future. We get confused by that if we're not careful as adults, that we think that if someone's done something to us, it really messes up what God wants to do in life. It's not true. It's just not true. God doesn't go again, oh man, I don't know what to do now that that human has done that. He can orchestrate events and work through the worst situations. So he doesn't lose track of you in those circumstances, and the circumstances don't dictate your future. They just don't. And Joseph is one of many examples through the Bible that's proof of this kind of truth. And then in verse 7, then, actually, oh yeah, okay. Joseph was well built. I hear you, boy. I just picture him right now, David. Want me some of that steak. Let's pray right now, Lord Jesus. Some people are having too good a time. So that's the end of verse 6. I know technically it's the end of verse 6. But your translation probably has a paragraph break that says now Joseph's new paragraph. I think that's a good way to paragraph break in Hebrew. Remember, in Hebrew, there's no verses, but I think now Joseph was well built and handsome. The only other person in the entire Bible who is called well built and handsome or of beauty, whatever, is his mom, Rachel. The only two people in the whole Bible that's called well built and handsome. Even David wasn't called for the same Hebrew word. And after a while, his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, come to bed with me. Just for Bible study. How forthright is that? I want you to have sex with him. That's what she just said. That's what the nice thing. But he said, absolutely, I'll do whatever you want, because I like, he refused. He refused. And listen to his reason. With me in charge, he told her, my master does not concern himself with anything in the house. Everything he owns, he has entrusted to my care. No one's greater in this house than I am. My master has withheld nothing of me except you, because you're his wife. How then can I do such a wicked thing and sin against God? That is, look at all I've got. Have you gone crazy? I'm not losing that for you, and not to mention God is sin. It's a sin, verse 10. And though she spoke to Joseph day, in Hebrew is day after day, constantly, day after day after day, he refused to go to bed with her or even be with her. No, no, no. This is not a one-time request. This is being chased and pursued. She's trying to get him. Verse 11. One day he went to the house to attend to his duties, just like he always does, and none of the household servants were inside. And she caught him by his cloak and said, come to bed with me, like now. But he left his cloak in her hand and ran out of the house. Now, you must understand you might have read the story and you've heard it 100 times, but in the ancient world, this is bizarre. Every single master had sex with their slaves whenever they wanted to. They just did. I can prove it. Egyptian, Greeks, Romans, The one culture for which I don't have evidence that they had as much sex as they wanted was Jews. They only did that when it was handed over. As we saw last week, Sarah can't be a child, so he goes to Hagar. That it's under a very specific situation. But Egyptians, the Greeks, and Romans, they all did it. Men, women, boys, girls were at the master's pleasure. So for him to say no is bizarre. It's just like today how Americans routinely have sex with everything they breathe. So it is bizarre today. It is bizarre today if a teenager or adult goes, I'm not having sex with you. What? What? I told my son this yesterday. We were waiting for his mom to finish shopping at Marshall's. We were having talking about that. I said, imagine how bizarre it would be. What would happen? What would your peers say to you in the normal trends of life if you knew some hot woman was chasing you and you routinely said no? How long do you take for the word to spread? Oh, it immediately. What is wrong? You're gay. They would be relentless in shaming. What is wrong with you? She's coming after you. Man, and I won't say all the stuff they would be relentlessly shaming. That's exactly how normalized it is today. That's like in the ancient world, how normal it was for slaves to have sex. This is bizarre. And what's Joseph's response? Look at all my blessings that God given me. I'm not going to waste them on you. What's wrong with you? What are you talking about? No. My desire for righteousness far exceeds my desire for pleasure. He did exactly what almost no one in our culture does. He flees from sexual temptation. He doesn't embrace it. He doesn't flirt with it. He didn't go, it's just 3 drinks. I was just buzzed. I didn't stay at the bar that long. I just saw her this. We just did this for a while. He never flirts. Paul says it clearly in 1 Corinthians, which I preached on a year ago, 6. He says, flee from sexual immorality. Use a different Greek word. It's the same Hebrew. Run! You're lying in bed and some girl gets in and oh, dude, what do you get? No. You are mistaken. This is my bed. Not today, right? That day it's right. Just be honest. American culture, but Christians have this view. Christians flee from sexual morality. No, I ain't got no ring on it. Nope. Mm-mm. But, no. Imagine if the entire church acted like the church and embraced it. How bizarre it would be to the world, and how incredible would that be? How amazing would it be to go, and you know what them Christians all have in common? Every single one of them are virgins till they get married. A bunch of dumb weirdos, and they would just relentlessly shame us like my son would if some hot woman chased them. Here we go. Thank you. Yeah. Why do you flee that all the time? What's wrong with you? You don't fully, what's wrong with you? Christians go, oh, nothing at all. Let me tell you about a God who designed it. I don't mean to sound disrespectful, but sister, brother, whoever's chasing me, you're not worth it. You're not worth it. I'm not losing all my blessings because of you. No thanks. What can I get you? Some tea? Get out of my bed. Get out of my DMs. Is that what they call it? Run. Run away from sexual morality, Christian. Run away from it. Children, some adults, particularly kids, I was like, but what's the limit? How close can I get? Run. Fast I can. When she saw that he had left his cloak in her hand, had run out of the house, she said, you know what? This wasn't right. I shouldn't have made him try to have sex with me. No. She calls her household servants. Hey, look what happened. This Hebrew is brought to us to make sport of us, literally to make fun of us. He came in here. See how it's now it's racist. This Hebrew. He came here to make fun of us. He came in here to sleep with me, but I screamed. You heard it, right? Right. You heard it, right? Yes, ma'am. Didn't hear jump. She didn't scream. Verse 15. When he heard me scream for help, he left his cloak and he ran out of the house. She kept his cloak beside her until his master came home. Then she told him the story. That Hebrew slave you brought us came to me Now she's only blaming him. You did this to me. Verse 18, but as soon as I screamed for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran out of the house. His master of the story, his wife told him, saying, this is how your slave treated me? He burned with anger. It's not clear who he's mad at. It's not clear. He's mad at Joseph. He's mad at her. He doesn't fully believe her. It's unclear. The reason why it's unclear is it just says he's angry. I don't know who he's angry at. And the next thing is also bizarre. Joseph's master took him and put him in prison, a place where the king's prisoners were confined. But that's what's weird. It's because had he really believed he tried to rape her, it's a capital offense. He'd have killed her, killed him immediately. But he goes, I'll put him in prison. I'll put him in prison. Which is not good, but he could have been killed. Now, one thing that really stands out, well, two related things. It really stands out to me, this part. So she's got this fake story lying to a righteous behavior, and she's going to be shamed about this. I'm so mad he would not give in to my sin, and he can be punished for doing the right thing. You can't be punished for doing the right thing. And that's why it's gibberish when we see things all the time. Well, there's always two sides to every story. Let's bring in Joseph. Let's just see who's, let's just see, there's always different interpretations. That is gibberish. Depends on the story. But if that's the case, there's not two sides. Joseph did the right thing, and she's a liar. He did the right thing, she's a liar. He did the right thing, she's a liar. There are liars in the world. You might know some, you might be one. We can suffer injustice as a victim just because someone's a liar, or they're rude or hateful, or they're insecure or wounded. And we didn't do anything. We didn't deserve this at all. Sometimes people are just wrong. And that's what happens. The Christian embraces that and say, I might be the victim of a non-Christian doing a non-Christian thing, what non-Christians do. They might just attack me because I didn't do what they wanted. It's childish and wounded and ridiculous and sinful and satanic even. But I'm just a victim. And that's what it's going to be. And sometimes I've got to suffer the consequences. I don't like the consequences. But I'm prepared that I might be victimized, even though I did the right thing. Jesus and the early church said that over and over and over. Get ready for that. The world's going to hate you. It hated me. He said that in John. But notice this. Nevertheless, even though Joseph is put into a situation he didn't ask for, every time Joseph did the righteous thing, a non-Hebrew responded and put him exactly where God wanted him to go. That's fantastic. That makes me so happy when I think back in my own life of what was done to me. That God could use non-Christians to do horrible, evil things. That's exactly what I think. Ooh, David, I got that's step 13 of 15, baby. Now, I wish, Melody, I might do this in the world to come. I might go, but God, is there any other way? Did I have to go to prison and do this and this and get that embarrassment, shame, and this hard work? Is there anything else that could happen? I don't think I'll care. I think I'll love him. Like, no. Our goal is to pursue that godly character wherever we're at, not being obsessive about making sure the non-Christian honors our name. No, I'm going to exonerate my character. I'm not going to obsess about that. I am obsessed about being godly in my character. And you might make that choice. I can't think of one movie character where it's a good guy who does this. But there are many, many bad guys in movies that do this, like the Joker, who deliberately gets arrested to move him exactly where he wants to be. And there's always a moment in the movie, like The Dark Knight Rises, when he goes, where's he at? He's all like, that means he wanted to get caught. And all of a sudden there's just, oh my goodness, because he's a mastermind. That he looked so many steps ahead of the chessboard. He knew exactly where he wanted, so he can get out. Now that's an evil character. But if you think of in a good character, God says, yes, I can use prison to get you exactly where, just trust me. Just be a disciple of Jesus, do the right thing. If your purity, sexual purity, if whatever your purity, if that purity causes you to get so much trouble and shame and embarrassment, lose your job and your family and friends, and you go to prison metaphorically or literally, I got you. I got you. Don't ever forget Jesus was killed for this. He was crucified. This delusion that fills churches, God will bless you. Everyone in the story is Joseph. I'm going to say that later on. No, you are not. At no point in the sermon have I said, you're Joseph and I'm Joseph. Ridiculous. Not everyone goes to the top head attendant and oversees all of Egypt. That's not true. If anything like Joseph we want to be like, as I've said over and over, is his character, because we see that all through Jesus in the New Testament as well. He fled, did the right thing, and God still said, you did the right thing, and I'm using that evil choice that they did against you. I'll move you. Because what happened? This next thing is very important. But while Joseph, verse 21, in verse 20, while he's in prison, Yahweh was with him. And he showed kindness and granted favor in the eyes of the prison warden. So the warden put Joseph in charge of all those who held in prison, and he was made responsible for all that was done there. The warden paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care because Yahweh was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did. There are jail systems around the world right now. I've seen documentaries where they pick prisoners and they oversee other prisoners. And it helps diminish fighting and gang war, whatever, because then they lead themselves. So this is a very ancient idea. I will let Joseph be in charge of this. I'm still with him. But this setup is to get him with other political prisoners that will be the exact setup he needs for the next phenomenal thing in the story. It's a brilliant thing. It's brilliant. So Christians, dear friends, when God is leading you, I'm not trying to be cheesy, but when he's leading you, it looks like a setback. It's just a setup. Setbacks are setups for God's master plan. It looks like this massive wall that he's like, yeah, but I'm going to use that and topple it over here and walk right on through. And even in difficult seasons, we have got to stay faithful. We've got to be diligent. We've got to trust his timing. You have got to flee from sexual morality, any sin. You stick with him. And if he's leading you, if he said, the Bible, God, if he's leading you, which I think he is, in a situation, you trust him. That he's lived you in exact spots he wants you to be in. If you're being obedient and faithful, he'll put you in the exact spot you're in. Just like the last 4,000 years. Paul went to prison over and over and over. What did he do? He sang hymns and converted the guards. He'd come out and go, hey man, nice to meet you. Thanks for all your hard work. I'll see you at church. He can nonstop. I mean, but it says a lot about us when we read this story. I thought this a lot this week. When you read this story, what stands out to you? Do you find yourself getting more mad that he's in that situation and this happened to Joseph? Man, Joseph, I feel you, brother. It's horrible. It's not right. Part of me appeals to that part of, man, Joseph, man, it's horrible what happened to you. Or do you focus on, and God was with him? Yahweh was with him. God was with him. What do you focus on in life? You look back on your narrative. Before you die and you do a life review right now, your own autobiography, you think about what you've been through in life. What do you focus on more? All that was done against you? And then he did, and she said, I can't believe it. I still haven't forgiven them. Is that what you do? Maybe you have a self-defense and woundedness, whatever. What do you, when you look back in your life, or do you go, God was with me there, God was with me there, God was with me there, and then he moved me here. I didn't like that part, but then God was with me that too. And he sustained me. Remember we were poor on food stamps around that time, couldn't pay the power bill? Yeah, how do we make it? I don't know. But God was doing it. That's how we made it. And then he did this. And remember when I got that job? And he was with me there. I think that the author of the story wants us to get our lenses on and focus on the time God was with us all the time. Because God he gave his word to Abraham. I'm not done with you people. I'm not done with you people. You stay obedient. I'll bless everything you're going through. But stay with me. Would you pray with me this morning? Ask Heavenly Father for that capacity for my own life. I beg for it. I beg you for it. I beg you for the capacity to focus on where you're with me, to focus on where you're taking me, to focus on where you're going to take me. And perhaps there are other people in this room who are watching online who ask me. I beg you for that capacity. Why do I beg? Because I'm not great at it. Because the world is difficult. Because dealing with other people can be difficult. I can be difficult to other people. Dreams don't come true all the time, and expectations aren't always met, and on it goes. And the parts of us that are so disappointed and wounded can turn bitter and angry and unforgiving, and we simply do not look at where you were active. And when we're so bitter, if we're real frank about it, it's difficult to even see you active at all. And it's just a slow fade away from God. I don't want to be that kind of person. I want to be the kind of disciple of yours that stays faithful, even if I'm the only person in the proverbial household, if the only person at work, the only person anywhere that stands up for you, so be it. Help us be the people who graciously and courageously don't give a rip about what happens to us, but only live our lives obedient to you. Because you're good and you love us and you forgave us and you're forgiving us and you've never left us. You've never left anybody. You don't orphan. Jesus, please help us. Perhaps there are people in this room right now, Lord Jesus, you know hearts perfectly well, but speaking on their behalf to you, perhaps they need that reminder this morning, and they're deeply woundedness to crawl out a little bit into the sunshine, to give you one more chance that they can trust you. Would you help them see you in the midst of the pain or sorrow to which they might be going? God, please stop that. God, pain is real and it hurts. I can't see it all. Please remind us this morning. Break through. Just break through that dark, that despair that says, I'm with you. I'm right here, baby. I never left. I know the circumstances are tough. I still see you. I'm with you. Stay obedient. I've got your hand. You're in prison. I'm with you in prison. Help us know that, believe it, and act like it, and sing praises in the darkest of times. And in Jesus we pray.